Charlie Downs is with us. How's it going, Charlie?
It's great, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Happy New Year.
And
good,
to you.
Good to see you. I mean, I was about to use the phrase, can we start a sentence with, in fairness to Rachel Reeves? Is that possible?
Well, I think we should always be charitable, even with our political opponents.
We can give it a go, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, on this issue in particular of her going to China, look, I mean, sure, it's not a great look that she's going to China in the middle of what is, looking like the beginning of an economic crisis. But at the same time, I think it's better that we have good relations with geopolitical,
Agreed.
Nominal allies like China. Although, of course, there's a conversation to be had there. I think it's not a huge issue that she's going there right now, because this was a scheduled visit. It's fair enough that she's going.
Yeah, I agree, and we can have fun with it. That she's legged it over to the to the red land of doom. But the reality, the irredeemable reality, is here at home, there are problems. Now, she will obviously say, well, we inherited a big black hole of 20, you can't keep saying that, Rach. You've got to move on somehow. I don't think there's anything in any kind of fiscal guidebook anywhere that says tax people more and you will grow the economy.
No,
but that appears to have been the route she took.
Well, this is the mindset of socialists throughout history, and I'm not going to try and claim that this Labour government is like hardcore socialist in the kind of 1970s style, because I think that's a little bit facetious, because that was a different time entirely to the one that we're living in now. I think also that it's tempting to sit here and look at the likes of Rachel Reeves and acknowledge, it's pretty evident that this woman is not really well suited to this job. Rachel from accounts and all the rest of it. But I think actually, if we look into the economic philosophy that seems to underpin this Labour government, I think there's a number of things that we need to say, because within the budget there was an order for public bodies to reduce their spending, efficiency cuts effectively. But there's never any conversation of sort of more broad cuts on things that are non-necessary spending. When we're talking about the interests of ordinary British people, for example, the fact that we spend over £25 billion a year explicitly on foreigners, between asylum and foreign aid and so-called climate aid that goes abroad, often ending up in the pockets of corrupt foreign politicians, by the way, and not helping ordinary people in foreign countries. There's never any conversations about that. There's never any conversations about cutting, for example, diversity officers in the NHS, for instance, on which we spend millions of pounds a year. And that's because I think the economic philosophy that informs this Labour government is fundamentally internationalist. It doesn't really have the national British interests.
I mean, the last lot were not much better in that respect.
Well,
they
this is the
bit
point.
Of DEI, didn't they?
This is
there
the point
at Tory
here.
HQ.
Yeah, and this is the thing with British democracy. Actually, is we are sold the idea that we have a say over how our country is run, because every 5 years we vote in and out the public-facing element of government. But what we forget is the fact that there is a private, non-public-facing element of government that consists of 500,000 people. The civil service employs 500,000 people, and really, at the end of the day, those are the people who are actually running the country. And if you look at the economic philosophy, as you say, that has underpinned this government and the government before it, and the government before that, by the way, maybe even right the way back to Thatcher, it's fundamentally neoliberal. It's fundamentally, it's based on the idea that free trade, international trade, free markets, this, that and the other, are what save a nation, are what bring prosperity to a nation. But I think if you speak to ordinary people now, especially young people, by the way, in Britain, what we're lacking is not the free market. What we're lacking is not international trade. What we're lacking is security. What we're lacking for young people, for example, is the ability to just own a piece of private property, to own a house, right? And to raise a family, to feel as though we belong, feel as though we have a stake in society, and to work a job that we feel, we are getting a fair day's pay for, feel dignified in doing. Because obviously there is this narrative that British people are above doing certain jobs, which is why we need to bring in millions of immigrants every year. Now, I think that this is nonsense. I think that this is a narrative sold to us to justify mass immigration. Because if you look in the past, we had no problems running an international empire on purely consisting mainly really of British people. And, I just think that if we had a system that actually incentivised hard work and rewarded people fairly for the work they do, we wouldn't be facing the problems we have. But I've already, as I've just said, mass immigration underpins all of this, because all the while we are bringing in millions of people every year, many of whom are not net contributors to the economy, many of whom are taking more than they're putting in. The economic situation is not going to improve, but still, as ever, we see no will to actually recognise this by our governing class.
Indeed. Let's move to our next story. Elon Musk pushing to get rid of Keir Starmer before Britain's next general election. He believes Western civilization is threatened. I've seen, I think, Jordan Peterson chipping in on the same point as well. Well, I mean, he's certainly letting it be known what he thinks. It's been revealed that the Home Office is now investigating Elon's tweets. He's also been retweeting British commentators. And here is one you might recognise. Well, I'll tell you what, let me do it this way. Here's one you might recognise. Sitting opposite me right now, Charlie, that doesn't matter, Charlie Downs is with us.
Britain is me. It's everyone who's come before us and everyone who
why are you playing the clip?
It's these isles and all of their children. It's everyone who
the way it works, if
the
we
English,
can't
Scottish,
you can't just play the clip
Irish.
over me if we are in the middle of talking. So let's lose the clip. Let's just think about what we're doing.
Indeed.
Charlie, I do apologise.
That's quite all right. Yes, so me and Elon Musk, we're like that now. We are best mates.
I know. So he's followed you on Twitter?
He has. Yes, he's engaged with some of my content that I put out, which is generally speaking just pieces to camera talking, as we are now, about the issues that are facing our country. Sure. He reposted one of my videos and he followed me. I've sent him a message, but he hasn't replied yet. Please, Mr. Musk. But anyway, this.
Have you blocked him?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
You haven't blocked him?
No, I haven't. You know, look,
because he is
a
nutter, right? I mean, he might be a lovely nutter. He might be our nutter.
Well, I think the thing is, right, he has waded into the political conversation at a time where it is extremely volatile, right, especially in Britain. He's somebody who I think, I mean, he is, you know, he has British ancestry, but he doesn't live here. And so I don't think he really recognises the situation in Britain on the ground. Because, you know, for example, with the engagement with Tommy Robinson, Tommy Robinson is a man who has been vilified by the media for decades at this point, and, you know, to an extent perhaps rightly so, because I think he's made a great many mistakes. But the phenomenon that Tommy Robinson represents, as long as it goes unaddressed, which is to say working class communities feeling as though their homes are being transformed in a way they don't like by immigration, I don't think that phenomenon is going anywhere. And actually, I will say this, I think that all the while Tommy Robinson, the Tommy Robinson phenomenon is left unaddressed, we're going to see the emergence of far nastier figures than Tommy Robinson. And so, you know, Elon Musk wading into the conversation and saying that Tommy Robinson should be freed and that he's a political prisoner, I understand where he's coming from with that. But with that being said, I think there's more nuance to it on the ground.
Do you think, though, and it's because there are so many facets to this discussion, and I pretty much agree with what you've just said. The problem is he doesn't really know much about Robinson, and you know, Reform's argument is, look, not that Robinson has asked to join Reform, but nonetheless, you know, the baggage on his CV is too great to be in any way mirroring or kind of endorsing this bloke. It doesn't matter. He might be right on that. And I know people like this, you know, they're right on one thing, but they're an absolute menace on everything else.
For sure.
And you think, so therefore you become an unreliable character or witness.
Yeah, and when it comes to actual electoral strategy, right, if Reform were to bring in Tommy Robinson, it's kind of over. Because if you speak to ordinary people, Tommy Robinson he basically represents the furthest right position in British politics. In the minds of ordinary people. Whether that's actually true or not, and I would actually make the case that isn't true.
Another matter,
Is another matter, yes. But one thing I have been slightly actually disturbed by is the readiness that some British commentators have had for what amounts to foreign interference in our politics, right? And whether that's coming from foreign friends like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and so on, I still think that we, you know, the kind of Brexit spirit that sovereignty is something that's desirable, I think it has to be remembered, right? Because as much as we might like Donald Trump, as much as we might like Elon Musk, actually, you know, Britain's really been a vassal state to the United States since the end of the Second World War. You know, our entire foreign policy, for example, is completely dictated by what the United States does. And I don't think that's hugely desirable. I think that we want to be an autonomous, self-governing nation, and we will gladly accept help from our American friends. But actually, when it comes to matters of domestic policy, it's really, I mean, that's on us to solve.
Is there something, I mean, the Musk stuff, I you know, before anybody was really talking about Musk, I was always banging on about this genius character that, you know, but he wasn't known really for his political opinions back then. He was also a Democrat supporter back in the day.
Many such cases,
lots of them, and then suddenly he sort of found himself in this new position. He put a poll out on his Twitter feed, you know, essentially asking, you know, do you need America's help to sort of unseat this government? I mean, is that a wise place for someone to be who's about to become, you know, almost the right-hand man to the president?
Well, look, I mean, you know, as much as, like, as you said, Elon Musk has followed me on Twitter in the last few days, which is, you know, a really surreal kind of experience. But we have to remember that social media is not real life, right? I know people, I have known people where this kind of attention goes straight to their head. And I've been sort of sitting here for the last few days being like, okay, look, it's very cool that Elon Musk has followed me, but it's social media, right? It's not real life. And the same rule applies to this poll that he did. It's just a poll on social media. It's not, this is not international policy making.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. I'll raise you a J.K. Rowling and an Alan Sugar on the celebrity follows, but I think you might still be carrying gold on this one.
Well, hopefully.
Certainly at the moment.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, maybe in a couple of years' time, Musk will be in jail or something, along with, somebody else. Who knows?
Yeah, who was it? Was it a German politician who was calling for his arrest, or was it Macron? I think it might have been Macron was calling for his arrest.
That's the kind of thing, Macron, maybe Trudeau, I don't know, those kind of characters.
Cohort of globalist leaders,
only I sort of missed Jacinda Ardern in that respect, actually, because she did make up the triage of doom.
Yeah, well, although we have had Keir Starmer now come in to fill her place.
He's filled the gap nicely.
Indeed.